Assemblymember Bonta was first elected to the Assembly in 2012. He is a Democrat representing the 18th Assembly District, encompassing the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. As a freshman legislator, Assemblymember Bonta was appointed chair of the Assembly PERS Committee, where the legislature hears all public employee and PERS legislation. George Linn, RPEA's Director of Public Relations, caught up with the Assemblymember in his district office.
RPEA, thank you for joining us this morning, Assemblyperson Bonta, because it's really important that we discuss some of the issues that are before us here in the state legislature.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You've been in office now for over a year. What have you found the challenges to be, and do you think that they are exactly what you thought they would be?
I expected different challenges, and I was actually excited and pleasantly surprised about the state of California when I got into the legislature and began serving just over a year ago. I was fully expecting to have to make very difficult cuts to services that we really care about here in the state of California, like public education or the social service safety net, job creation programs, which had been the pattern for many years up until I got there. But because of some very difficult decisions that had been made by our legislative leaders and the governor, we were able to get into a position when I arrived where we had a balanced budget and even had a projected modest surplus. And so the financial footing of the state is improving. I really think that we have turned a corner. We're on the road to recovery. California is on the rise again. And so it gives us a lot of exciting opportunities to do things like we did this year, where we actually reinvested in those critical services that had been cut for many years in the past, like providing more funding for every school district in the state of California, so more money for public education, more money for CSU and UC, more money for our social service safety net, more money for a lot of other programs. So the challenges are different. I think there are some unique challenges around having a 2/3 majority in each house. But as a Democrat, those are challenges that I'm happy to have. But they are different than what I was expecting, and I was pleasantly surprised. And I think I have a lot of hope for the direction that California is heading in.
It sounds like a lot of these challenges that you just mentioned are some of the reasons that brought you into the race to run for the Assembly.
They are. As a local leader, I was a vice mayor of the city of Alameda. I was a director of the Alameda Healthcare District. And as a husband and a father of 3 children who are in the public schools, who are growing up here in California, I saw some of the devastating impacts of some of the decisions that were made at the state level, from the ongoing cuts to our public schools, to the eradication of redevelopment agencies, to the cuts to other programs that really impacted people at a local level. And there was a lot we could do as a city or as a healthcare district director, but also a lot that we couldn't do, and we were at the mercy of the state. So I thought it was very important to provide a voice at the state level, to bring the experience that I had as a local leader, as a husband, as a father, and bring it to the state level and provide my voice to the dialogue and the debate as those decisions were being made. So that's why I ran.
How do you see problems, and are there problems that you see are almost too great to be resolved in the state of California?
You know, I think there's some problems that can't necessarily be solved by government alone. So with that as an exception, I'm hopeful for the ability of California to solve many of the problems it's facing. There are some problems where we need to work very closely with the private sector. Job creation programs, for example. We can do things to incentivize investment and encourage investment in job creation, expansion, startups, innovation. But we can't make it happen without private partners. But we can create a climate that is good for job creation and for innovation. We did a lot this year that I thought was very exciting, and it makes me hopeful for what we'll do in year 2, and hopefully I'll have additional terms in office as an assembly member. So in years 3 and 4, we were the first state in the country to implement the Affordable Care Act. We implemented something that drastically changed the way we finance our public schools with the local control funding formula, also known as the weighted student formula, which provides more resources for school districts with students in poverty who are English learners who are in foster care. We raised the minimum wage to the highest in the entire country at $10 an hour. We provided driver's licenses for undocumented members of our community. We did a lot of amazing things this year, so it makes me hopeful for what we can do. I think government does have its limitations, but it can when it is limited, it can work with its partners outside of government to create solutions.
You mentioned earlier the two-thirds majority, and how do you find working with this and collaborative issues and getting things happening?
So the two-thirds majority provides some opportunities to do some things that we couldn't do without a two-thirds majority. You need two-thirds, of course, to have revenue enhancements, raise taxes. You need a two-thirds to put constitutional amendments onto the ballot. We used the two-thirds rarely, to be honest, in this past year. I thought that was a good thing in terms of acting with restraint, but it was there if necessary on important issues and on important votes.
As the chair of the Public Employees Retirement and Social Security Committee, what would you define as the critical committee issues that have been there in 2013? And looking into the crystal ball, what do you see in 2014?
Yeah. So in 2013, in the PERS Committee, Public Employees Retirement and Social Security Committee that I'm the chair of, we focused on two general areas that were priorities. One was implementing AB 340, also known as PEPRA, making sure we had cleanup bills that cleaned up some of the provisions that were mostly technical in nature, and also having a set of conforming bills to make sure that AB 340 could be fully implemented. So we spent a lot of time on that this year, sort of ensuring the promise of AB 340, which was a bill that was difficult to negotiate, had a lot of different interests, but in the end there was a collaborative resolution. So my view was part of the promise that I need to help keep as the chair of the PERS Committee was to make sure that bill was implemented as it was agreed upon. So that was number one. Two, this year there were a lot of collective bargaining agreements of the different employee organizations that were up for review and ratification and a vote by the legislature. And so I actually carried the bill for SEIU 1000, which was the first one to be introduced and to be ratified, and then a number of other unions had their bills introduced this year. So those were the two priorities and areas of focus: conforming legislation for AB 340 and cleanup legislation for AB 340 on the one hand, and then also making sure that we had the collective bargaining agreements voted on in legislation. And then for 2014, we will continue to have to monitor and ensure the implementation of AB 340 and PEPRA. And so there might be some attempts to reduce benefits, retirement benefits for public employees, and we want to make sure we hold firm on what AB 340 is. There might be some attempts to roll back AB 340. And again, we've got to make sure we just implement AB 340 because that was a highly negotiated, intensely negotiated bill. We'll also be looking at things like CalSTRS, which has a $70 billion projected shortfall, making sure that it's fully funded and that our hardworking teachers in the state of California receive the pensions that they were promised and that they deserve. So those are some of the areas that I see as focal points for next year.
I'm with RPEA, and as you know, RPEA has taken a major stand on the CalPERS decision to develop a website that shows pension amount, individuals' names, etc., making it much easier to isolate individuals. These issues are going to be part of a committee meeting that's coming up, I think, in January. Mm-hmm. Where do you see this going? Do you see it being a long, drawn-out process that needs a lot of attention, or do you think that there are some simple solutions?
When the pension website proposal was put forward, there were some immediate red flags raised and concerns raised by labor organizations, by RPEA, and by others. And I had some meetings in my office immediately thereafter to discuss those concerns and to try to determine a way to move forward. And one of the concerns, of course, is privacy rights and the possibility of this website publicly disclosing potentially information that could be abused, that could lead to predatory practices. And so we want to strike a balance between the public's access to relevant information and the privacy rights of individuals and protections against financial abuse and predatory practices. So that's what we're having the hearing about. We're doing it jointly with the Senate. So we'll have an joint Assembly Senate committee hearing and put everything on the table and figure out the best way to move forward. I hope it won't be super complex, but the issue is an important one, and we need to hear out the different perspectives and hear the proposals for solution before we come to a concrete course going forward.
What do you foresee happening with the Pension Reform Act of 2014, designed to scale back what critics refer to as unrealistic and unsustainable retirement promises that governments have made to their employees?
A couple possibilities. That's Mr. Reed's proposal out of San Jose, and so it's unfortunate that he's bringing it forward. There was a major statewide discussion about pension reform back in 2012 that led to AB 340 in Pepper, what we've just been discussing.
Exactly.
And so this is now an additional attempt to change that, upset that negotiated agreement and be more aggressive and do things that I personally don't believe are appropriate at all, particularly taking away benefits both for pension and for retirement health care of current employees who have an expectation of what their benefits will be, who have been made a promise of what those benefits will be, and changing them mid-course. So they have no certainty about what their pension benefits or retiree health care benefits will be. It can be changed at any time. It undermines the collective bargaining process, which I'm a firm believer in. I believe it works and it should work, and management and labor can make it work. I've never been part of any collective bargaining process as on the labor side, management side, or even as a mediator, which I've served as sometime, which hasn't worked in the end. And at the table is where these agreements should be made, not through some state constitutional amendment to take away benefits from our hardworking public employees.
We've had a lot of concerns about the fact that there's ongoing attack on public pensions and those things. How do you see the recent bankruptcies of cities really interacting with that, and is this a trend that we can foresee that would be things that would be coming to your committee?
I think that public employees have all too often been unfairly made the scapegoat for other financial mismanagement decisions or other fiscal decisions that led to challenging budgets in cities across the state. And so it's easy to point at the public employees and say, look, they have a retirement, they have pension, they have retiree health care, and say that it's their fault. I think the debate needs to change about who has, the debate, the way we talk about it now is, some people in the private sector don't have a defined benefit pension or retiree health care, so no one in the public sector should either. I think we should flip around that discussion and say public employees do have retirement security with defined benefit pensions. They do have health care, retiree health care, and that's important. How can we all have that? How can we make that available in the private sector as well? So not, we don't have it, so they shouldn't, but public employees have it, so how can everyone have it? And I think it's inappropriate to blame public employees for other financial mismanagement decisions, and then to use bankruptcy as an opportunity to get out from underneath promises that were made to those public employees. I think we might see some more of that. We've already seen some in Vallejo and other places, Stockton. But as the economy recovers, I think that will it'll strengthen the budgets and the local economies of cities as well. So as we come out of the Great Recession, I think we'll see it less, but I don't think we're done seeing it.
What would you consider your greatest challenges that you have overcome?
For me, one of the bills that I was proudest of coming out of the Assembly PERS Committee and that I personally authored as the PERS chair was the first new contract for SEIU 1000. It was the first one that came out. SEIU 1000 is the largest public employee union, and the contract provided for the first COLA salary increase in many years. It ended furloughs. It ended another type of furloughs called mandatory personal leave days. So in my view, it honored public employees for what they had given back in the hard times, and said, now that our economy is recovering, you should benefit as well. We should all benefit together. And it was personally meaningful for me because both my parents were SEIU 1000 members. They're in the retirement union program now, but they were SEIU 1000 members for over 50 years combined. My dad worked for the state, so did my mom. My dad, Department of Health Services. My mom, Department of Water Resources. Through the benefits that they earned as union members, as SEIU 1000 members, provided health care for our entire family, me, my brother, my sister, my mom, and my dad. It allowed them to retire with defined benefit pensions that, despite what the press likes to say, are very modest in nature. My mom's around $30,000. My dad's in the same area. So it allowed them to plan for their future and to take care of their family. And I think we owe that to all the SEIU 1000 members who are currently working in the state of California. And I was proud to help move in that direction after years of devastating cuts to their benefits and their salary.
Mm-hmm. Looking into the crystal ball, what avenues do you see with your career in the legislature?
I want to continue to serve at the highest level that I can. I was very honored to be named a chair of a committee as a freshman, from the very start, and very proud to be chairing the Assembly Pers Committee. I want to continue to be in leadership to help the caucus in any way that I can move its priorities forward. And I mentioned some of the successes of this past year. I fully expect there to be other great successes and challenges in future years. So I want to do whatever I can within the Democratic caucus to help through whatever chairmanship or other leadership position that I can. And I hope to serve there in the Assembly as long as the voters keep sending me back to help make California great again and help with what I talked about earlier, which is California being back on the rise. I want to help facilitate that rise and make sure that Californians are being treated fairly and appropriately and well by their government, and that people across the state can believe again in California government as something that helps improve their lives and creates a future for their children.
Well, Assemblyman, I want to really thank you for the time that you spent with us this morning.
Thank you.
And the conversation that we've had, I think, has been really informative, and I think that you must be a very popular legislator because you have really good answers to very hard questions.
Thank you, George. I appreciate the time we spent together today, and thank you to RPEA for having me.